I think make some really bad decisions especially when you're thinking about barter, if you're not in the right headspace, and if your cash position isn't really strong. You can barter your way to bankruptcy.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales, marketing, and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which helps accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. And today, I have a special episode. The episodes to date really have been me interviewing one other person or doing a solo cast, but I'm down here in New Orleans with an amazing group of entrepreneurs who I happen to have the pleasure to get together with quarterly in various cities. And there are 5 guests on our roundtable today, all past presidents of entrepreneurs organization chapters up and down the East Coast, who all have different businesses and different experiences with different types of deals. So I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, despite the fact that we're not in the podcast studio and don't have ideal audio, because of the wisdom we have in this room. So I'm going to invite each of them to go around and introduce themselves, and they'll give you their name and their current company. And then I also want them to say, because I'm sure for most of them, whatever they're doing now was something that maybe or maybe not they envisioned as doing as a little kid. So what I want to hear is their name, their company, and what they wanted to be growing up as a little kid. Vijay.
Vijay Khatnani from J2 Solutions. I'm a partner in that firm, and we do IT staffing and IT projects. And what I wanted to do as a kid, probably be a doctor or a fireman. And that's not what I'm doing now.
Love it. Judy.
Judy Briggs from Boston. I own a local 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchise. We take your junk away. You point and we do the rest. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a pediatrician.
All right. Another potential doctor out there, lost to the world. Chuck.
Chuck Morris with Morris Creative Group in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're a marketing agency. Growing up, I primarily wanted to be a vet, but I also wanted to be an architect, pediatrician, and a truck driver.
I love the variety. And Scott.
I'm Scott Walton. I have the company Walton Financial, and as a kid, I saw myself a lot like my dad, being a medical doctor, making rounds with him, and inherited bedside manner as a result of that. He'd say, your children take the hobbies of their parents and turn them into careers, and I became the businessman.
I love it. So there are 4 people, at least one of the potential things that was going to be were a doctor. So Jane Bolin.
So I'm Jane Bolin. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I own Payton Bolin and Janelle Title, both real estate law firm and a real estate title company. And what I wanted to be as a kid was very clear. At the age of 2.5, about 3, I told my mom I wanted to be the President of the United States.
Oh, and for those who know Jane, let's just say that dream hasn't disappeared.
No, it has not.
I love it. So listen, we're going to have a great opportunity today because all of these phenomenal entrepreneurs not only have created amazing businesses, but they have also been involved in various different types of deals, from business partnerships to franchises to acquisitions of other companies to barter deals on services for equity. So, what I love about this in particular is one of the things I always say on the podcast is that there's all types of deals that people can do. And there are ones, that are bigger, that are smaller. There are ones you might have heard of that you didn't hear of. So I really love the variety here. So I want to start with, let's Vijay. Let's go in the same direction, and then we'll come back around. So Vijay, one of the things that I know have done is entered into a business partnership that you've had for a number of years, and the twist on it, which is something that a lot of people deal with or are considering whether they should do, is that you're in business with a family member.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how that business partnership works, who that family member is, and what the benefits and risks and detriments are of that kind of deal.
Yeah. So the other partner in my firm in J2 Solutions is my younger brother, Sanjay. The good part is we're family and we care about each other and care about the success of the company and each other. The bad thing is we're family and it sometimes gets in the way of getting things done. But the way we've worked around that is we each have our responsibilities in the firm and tend to stay in our lane. So Sanjay runs sales and recruiting. I run operations and marketing, and we stay to those lanes. So if one of us wants to do something, we of course talk about it and discuss it. And the third vote is the person that owns that function. But the flip side of that is also if you own that function and you screw it up or it gets screwed up, it's your job to fix it.
That's great. And you had a recent example that you talked about. You want to share that?
We did. My brother called the meeting on a decision that he thought he was going to make on an operational issue. And I called up and told him to stay out of my lane. And he immediately apologized and agreed and canceled the meeting. And it was a really dumb thing. It wasn't like it was strategic or anything that controversial, but he shouldn't have been making a decision because he didn't know that I'd already gone down that path and discussed the positives and the negatives and whether or not it made sense to do it or not. That's
great. And he respected that, which is great. You know, I deal with a lot of family businesses in my legal practice. And, I've been frankly devastated and amazed at how many times things devolve into horrible situations. When I've seen fathers and sons suing each other, siblings, fighting over stuff. But at the same time, if you can make it work, there are huge benefits. Yep. Yeah, it's great. All right, we're going to swing back to that. I want to sort of hit, each of the topics at a higher level, and then we'll sort of open it up a little more. So, Judy, franchising, right? That's something that is another kind of deal that businesses can do as an opportunity to be a franchisee. Frankly, there are some businesses out there that might even become franchisors. But you've done a couple of franchisee deals, being a franchisee. Talk to me a little bit at a high level about what the advantages of being a franchisee are and what some of the challenges are.
Well, I've seen in the last 16 years, one of the biggest benefits has been, obviously being a part of our franchise, everything is done for you. So it was my responsibility when I got into the business was to spend money on marketing and haul junk. And it's been great, over time, especially in the Boston market. One of the other advantages is that there's a group of us. And so together we combine our funds and we have larger marketing spends and we can outmarket our largest competitor just in the Boston market alone.
Let me just point out something that she mentioned here, because one, she's talking about being in a franchise, but she also talked about something that franchisees often do in a franchise model, but it's not limited to that model, which is they get together in basically a co-op marketing arrangement where they market together for the benefit of everybody. And that's the kind of deal that you can do even if you're not a member of a franchise.
Exactly. So we share the market. There's 6 of us. And, this particular year coming up, we've got $1 million TV ad, which, like I said, our next biggest competitor they can't afford like 1 month spend. So it really works out great.
It's great. And what at a high level, so some of the advantages are in a franchise that, a lot of things are taken care of for you. You can focus, they have a system, etc. The good ones have a brand that's valuable. Maybe they're doing some promotion for you. What about on the negative side? Where can franchise deals go wrong?
There's always opportunity for things to go wrong. Fortunately, I'm part of a great franchise, but one limiting factor is that, they do all the marketing from like a social media on the brand itself, the bigger brand versus the individual local markets. So we really are limited with what we have input into the social media that's localized.
It's great. The other thing I'll say that I've seen, with other franchisees is that, not every franchisor is great. The ones that are really good and build and they continue to grow the franchise and they put money behind it are great. But in some cases, for others, that's not true. For Judy with her 800 Got Junk franchise, because they're a good franchisor. But with other people, there are franchises that don't work out or bad franchisees, difficult people to deal with, where they're not upholding their end of the bargain. So like any other deal, you need to do your due diligence. You need to have good contracts, and you need to watch out for the ones that are not great. Mm-hmm. Good. So, Chuck, you've done, this is really interesting because I love some of the things that you've done here in that, you're in a services business like a lot of us. And you provide services normally for a fee. But you've done something where you have sometimes either not taking cash or discounted cash. I'd like to hear, I don't know which it is, in exchange for another type of payment. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I've got a friend who came to me and said, I need a marketing plan. I need some strategy. I'm a startup. It's a high technology company. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of capital to get the ball rolling. So he said, would you consider taking stock as a form of payment, have some equity in the company, and we'll pay some cash. As cash comes in, we'll have some money to pay for some expenses. But would you be willing to do your services side on this sort of barter trade for stock? And I'd never done it before. I happen to believe in the business idea and the technology involved. I think it's going to be a very, very valuable company at some point. They're planning on doing an IPO here in 2019. So it's a bit of a gamble. You take a chance on something you believe in. I happen actually also to believe in my friend and his ability to execute the idea. The upside is, I could make out like a bandit on the stock if it goes where we think it's going to go. The downside, of course, is that you're tying up resources inside your firm that actually cost you some money. So you got to kind of weigh that out. Is it worth it to you in the short and the long term?
And one of the things I've seen people do in this particular type of deal is, and again, Chuck had a specific situation with somebody he trusted and knew well. So he made the decision to do that. And frankly, what I always think of those is you should make that decision like an investment decision, right? Because you should do the same due diligence you would do if you were putting in money. So, I'm picking an example is not necessarily Chuck's number, but if you were trading off $50,000 or $20,000 or $100,000 in fees, it's the same thing as making that kind of cash investment. Maybe you discount it a little bit because your costs are not, are only a percentage of that. But still, whatever that amount is, it's an investment decision. What I see some people do is a hybrid where they, if their margins are 40% and they need 60% to cover their overhead, they may discount their fees by 40%, make sure the overheads, and the cost of the job's covered, but basically turn their profit into the equity piece of it.
Right.
That's another approach.
The way we did this deal was it was just basically retail for retail. He sold me stock at prevailing price, and I said, "Here's what the services would cost you in cash."
Great. So that's an interesting deal to look at, and I've very often been asked to do this, and frankly, I'm very careful on when I do it because you got to believe, you're betting on the upside, and so you got to believe that that's a real possibility. But I've seen some people do very, very well in these kind of deals.
And the time horizon is important too. If you're kind of stringing things up over a long period of time, that's more difficult than if you think the payoff is going to be relatively quick.
That's a great point. All right, Scott Walton. So, Scott, you are a phenomenal financial advisor, and you have over time grown your business organically, right, by providing great services for people, getting referrals, all those kind of ways us professionals do it. But you've also grown your business another way. So talk to us about that.
So I've been in my career field for half my life and did a lot of due diligence early-ish on in my career about what it would take for me to start my own business, hold my own name out there. So in my due diligence, I took a long list and narrowed quickly and found the way that I could work with my clients best, being an independent financial planner. It's a highly competitive industry. And then once I made that leap to start my own firm, one thing that I did was help other people find their happiness in the industry. It was heavily weighted towards big national firms. But in the many people that I've mentored to find their own ways in our industry, there were two in particular that I was the other side of their succession agreement. One gentleman, when he retired, we saw this just very classic see each other's clients together, and he faded out into the sunset. That was about a 7-year deal. So he retired. He took his own medicine in financial planning. And the other gentleman died on the golf course. I was his successor, so that tripped the succession agreement. They were two very different deals as far as money up front, payouts, the percentage of revenue going to me or the widow in one case, and the advisor in the other case. So each was very specific and different. What I learned was, though, that we're really good at taking over other financial planning practices, but it's based on helping other people in our industry find their own happiness. And two situations came back to help our overall independent practice.
And that's helped you grow. And it's interesting because Scott talked about being succession deals, and those opportunities are available in all types of industries, right? Basically, if somebody wants a solution for when they retire, die, become permanently disabled, things like that, you could be that potential solution. And then, of course, you can even do acquisitions before that. That's a different type of deal. But so acquiring a practice in his industry, it's similar either way, except, of course, there's some things that come into play when it's in the situation where somebody dies, for example. So that's great. And we're gonna come back around and start talking about some of these deal structures a little bit and some of the other things. But let's get over to Jane Bolin here, my fellow attorney friend and title company owner and politician.
Indeed.
So talk to me about some of the. I mean, you're in a business partnership in two different businesses, right? So talk to me a little bit about that, or other types of, what kind of deals you've done.
Yeah. So first with my partnerships, law firms are traditionally structured, as you know, Corey, with a partnership model. And I've always looked at it just from the eyes of being an entrepreneur. So the partnerships that I'm in, I originally started my law firm with Maury Payton. We met and it was an investment in each other. I jokingly call both of my partners my two husbands, and they are both individually married, and their wives are fine with that. And we brought in a third partner, Joe Janelle, and that was a decision about 2 years into our practice where we really were looking for what we were missing. What was missing, but we have certain strengths. I think that's always the case, and really getting clear about what you're good at and what you need in the partnership. So we brought Joe in. I will call it the deal of a lifetime. We didn't seek the normal equity. We brought him in for who he was. And we gambled on that and we won because Joe is also my partner at Janelle Title, hence the name of it. And we've worked very well together. Inside of deals, I would say to you, the title company, very interesting. There is the organic growth of that. That's the relationships we build, et cetera. But we did make a decision very early on to service a very large investor in Florida. So we're actually in-house there. And at first look, from any entrepreneur's point of view, that's all of your eggs proverbially in one basket, which is not where you want it to be. At the same time, that provided a lot of foundation for us. We were able to meet that entrepreneur's needs, essentially having in-house title, and be able to grow our company organically at the same time. So makes a whole lot of sense for us to do it that way. And that really, in the beginning, it seemed not like a good idea, but it really has been really the foundation of our title company.
It's interesting. I remember doing a course. I'm almost sure it was one of Harvecker's courses where he said that at least there's always this thing about not having all your eggs in one basket and diversifying your client base. And I think over time that makes sense. But he talked about, and I remember them giving some examples in this seminar about how many companies really started about one thing. And there's something about a value of focus in the beginning before you expand. And the analogy that they drew was, no, it's okay, at least in the beginning, to have all your eggs in one basket. just take really good care of that basket.
That's right. Don't drop the basket.
Yeah. All right. So I want to open it up because there's some structuring tips and do's and don'ts and lessons we've learned in the various types of deals people have done. And instead of just going around, again, why don't I just open it up? Whoever wants to jump in.
I just spoke, but I just want to jump in, so I'm going to do it. So inside of partnership, I think something I would want to share is, looking at a partnership, it's a decision you make. You start to run your businesses, but that partnership is its own relationship, and it requires alignment, and it requires communication, and it needs to be both inside the business and inside of what is the partnership. And I think that's something my partners and I have done very, very well. Just like I meet with you guys quarterly, I'm now meeting with my partners quarterly. So it's not just business planning. It's also, we're looking at all of it. And we're also looking at our own relationships, because business and personal, they overlap. There is no work and then life. This is your life and you run some businesses. So I think that's really important that people get that point of view, that context for holding a partnership. So that's what I want to share right off the bat.
And I want you to drill in a little bit, because so many people in business in general, whether they're solo or in partnerships, just have their head down, they're grinding, they're just getting the work done. And the idea of leaving the office for any period of time, right, is just totally not. But you guys take conscious time and do retreats together, do planning together. Why don't you talk about a little bit about that and the benefit of it?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we did find, we tried to do retreats in-house at the office, even on a Saturday. And the reality is that environment, it's all the same. The phone's just not ringing on a Saturday. And you lack the ability to tap into some natural creativity. So getting outside of your environment and going to other places, really being motivated by things that would surprise you, the way the streetcars work or the environment, or we laugh, the golf course. But you really you have the opportunity to be much more creative in that space. And whatever's there, whatever's looming in the background that you're trying to work through, payroll, funding, whatever it is, you get more freedom when you take yourself out of the environment. And so, as you guys know, I'm with you 8 trips a year I take that are, from the outside, someone can say, oh, she's just taking a bunch of trips. No. I'm taking those trips very deliberately to give myself a creative space to look at what's happening, to really drill into it with some freedom. And I always come back a better person. I always come back with something to provide. And it's very, very useful.
Awesome. All right. Other thoughts? Who wants to jump in?
I think something important about acquisitions and growing in the way that we have is the multiple. In our particular industry, the 2 deals that we did, they were really different, and the multiple was very different. So in our industry, there's a lot of play or leeway into what the value of a practice is based on its profitability. The first acquisition commanded a multiple about 2.5 times gross revenue. The gentleman had narrowed his practice down to 70 households, all highly profitable people that he had been through his career with, and there was a deep trust involved. And again, we took 7 years to go through that. They knew me, and in fact, the clients were kind of nudging him out and preferring me at the time that he did. So there was a loan involved. There was some upfront money for him, and then the payout, the revenue based on the ongoing revenue from the practice. I got 53% of the ongoing revenue, and he got 47%. And that was just his respecting me, since I was the one running the day to day at that point. The other practice was very different. Even though the gentleman had a succession plan in place, the multiple was much less. It was close to about 1.5 times ongoing revenue. The practice was a mess. It was the hodgepodge of really a whole generation worth of changes in the financial planning industry, from stockbroking to insurances, and that's been one of the challenges recently over the last couple of years, is to really clean up that practice. It's been very laborious. So there's, instead of a large upfront check, the widow chose incremental payments at the end of the end of a calendar year for a 5-year period of time, I'm getting 75% of that ongoing revenue, where she's getting 25%. So I didn't need to go to an outside source outside the industry to loan that money, which was different from the first. I had to find a firm that specialized in coming up with chunks of money that a traditional bank wouldn't normally be able to or know how to supply.
Yeah, so there's some interesting things that Scott raised in that, right? He talked about a little bit, about deal structuring in terms of how much money up front and what's paid over time. He mentioned valuation multiples, and in every industry, valuation multiples are different. And we'll have some people on the show that are specific valuation experts, and they'll talk about things like EBITDA and EBOC multiples and revenue multiples and discounted cash flow. So, one of the things is, in doing a deal like that is you're figuring out valuation. And then, as what I really like about what Scott talked about, especially in the cases where you're doing a succession, it's people you're gonna tailor that deal to the needs of both. Obviously, you need to take into account the worth of the practice, and you don't want to overpay, but you're also going to tailor that in a way that works for the estate or the person, depending upon how that comes about. And in smaller deals, and I'm talking about tens of hundreds of millions. They're often more customized. In bigger deals, sometimes there's just the way they're done. But in smaller deals, it's just figuring out what works for both parties. It's great. Who else?
Just a footnote on the barter deal we did. You have to be careful with that. You have to be in the right. One of the things we talked about on the retreat here is kind of being in the right headspace. I think make some really bad decisions especially when you're thinking about barter, if you're not in the right headspace, and if your cash position isn't really strong. You can barter your way to bankruptcy, basically. But if you can tolerate the risk for a period of time, there's a really huge upside on that.
That's great, and I like that warning. You can barter your way to bankruptcy. I mean, there are so many companies that aren't even clear on what their margins are and what their financials are, et cetera. And it's sort of what I alluded to before. This should be a conscious investment decision that you're making,
right.
Because you are giving up cash flow in your company.
That's right.
That's great.
I want to circle back to something Jane said earlier about retreats and communications with partners. Sanjay and I do a lunch every 2 weeks and catch up on stuff. I mean, we see each other every day. We talk every day in the office, but we allow space every 2 weeks for conversation about the business. When we do annual retreats, when we first started doing them, we did them in the office, and what we found was people, even though the doors were closed, the conference room, people just kept coming in. So we made a conscious effort to not be in the office when we did those, because we didn't want to be bothered, in the sense of we didn't want to be disturbed. Bother is the wrong word. We didn't want to be disturbed. When we did that, in the first couple of years that we did that, we went across the street to a friend's office, just sit there, and now we do an overnight retreat somewhere local where it's just us locked up in the room and doing that stuff. So communication is very important.
It's great.
And to tag team on what Vijay just said, being part of a franchise, it's great because we've got the brand and things like that. But yearly we have an annual conference, and, to tie into like a retreat, we go there once a year, meet with all the 144 other franchise partners, and we share our ideas. Not every market is the same. However, we go through the same things day in and day out. So it's a brilliant way to share all your successes and ideas with one another. And, it's one of the things that has helped me be successful over the last several years. So,
and that's another one, it's interesting with the franchise model, because as I said before, where you could sort of pull out the co-op advertising that franchise is often do. And even if you're not a franchise, potentially do that. This is another situation where you can do it. I'm amazed at how many companies do not actually reach out to quote unquote competitors. They think everybody's a competitor. But the truth is, if somebody's, depending upon what type of business you're in, it's possible if somebody's in a different geography, they're really not a competitor of yours, right? And so I've seen companies, and, we're all have been in the past or are members of Entrepreneurs Organization, and that's a great organization where you can connect with other people. But I know people have just called competitors and said, hey, let's get together. Because, certainly, first of all, if you come from a place of abundance and don't think that there's not enough for everybody, you're more likely to do that. But let's say even if you're a little worried, there are people in other markets that aren't really competitors. They just happen to do the same thing you do. And you could really, do some retreats and things with them. And frankly, potentially strategic alliances. We've got, we're going to have Damon Gersh on the show a little later. And one of the things he did in his industry was put together an industry association where they all support each other to help grow their businesses. And it's been significant. So look out for that episode as well.
That's an important point about just reaching out to other people. Being an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, it doesn't have partners. You can do what I call breathing your own air, where you're just kind of inside your head and you're not getting any outside inputs that help you make better decisions. And so to have an accountability group, to have other entrepreneurs to help you be a better entrepreneur and to give you a bit of a gut check on some of the things you're thinking, feeling, doing in your company, that's really important. Peer group.
That's great. So let's just spend a few more minutes if anybody has any particular tips or burning things that people should know about the types of deals that you do. And then I'll close it out with a final question for everybody. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say to your point about looking at the world with abundance, there's in our field, the demographic is such that there are going to be a lot of practices for sale. It always makes me sad when people look at the world as hyper competitive. That's something that gets into their head that they can control differently or look at differently. My philosophy is that when you look at the world as an opportunity to grow and to help, good things come back. And so in a field that's frankly aging out, where we need people to help people, I can't help but think that there'll be more opportunities in the future as a result of just that frame of mind.
That's great. Great. Any other tips before we roll around? All right. Awesome. So the last question I want to ask people about, because anybody who's followed any of my content or understands that authenticity is a hugely important thing for me. And authenticity for me is not just about integrity, but it's really about being aligned to what's true for you. So when you're thinking about doing deals of any type, how do you, and this is true for any business decision, but since we're talking about deals, I want to do it in there. When you make a decision to join a franchise, right? Or, to be in a business partnership or to do an equity deal, whatever it is, an acquisition. What do you do to make sure that business decision is coming from an authentic place? All right. I mean, Chuck, for example, so many people, I think yours is the easiest to look at where people can get off, because I've seen so many people get drawn in by the potential upside of that new startup and do equity deals, and they don't work out, right? Because their ego or their excitement or their greed or whatever, like there's something they get emotionally attached to and they make bad business decisions. So I'd love to know what you do to make sure it's authentic and lines up for you when you make these business decisions.
Well, mine was really easy because my friend Rod and I've known him over 20 years, and he's a brilliant engineer. And I just had a heart of wanting to help. He came to me and said, I've got these marketing and public relations things that I know nothing about any of those areas, and I know I'm going to need that stuff, and you're the guy I trust to do it. And I said, Rod, I'll help you, in any way I can for as long as I can for free, and then we'll talk about whatever we need to talk about at some other point. And that's when he came back to me and said, what do you think about working for some equity for some stock? So it's really his idea, but I came to it from just a really a pure heart of wanting to help my friend. And that sometimes, those things are hard. You can build up some resentment. I think sometimes where you feel like you're being taken advantage of by the friendship. I never felt that with Rod, but you have to watch out for those things. And I think that's where you have to be really transparent with each other about, hey, this is getting to be a little bit more than a favor. We need to kind of have a candid conversation about long-term, how does this look?
Awesome. My guess is you've been approached by other people to take equity for deals, and maybe you turned it down. Am I right?
I have, yeah.
What has been there that didn't align for you?
A lot of times it's just gut. It's just like there's some kind of energy that that person or group was giving off, and you just want to run away. Some of it had to do with the idea. You think it doesn't resonate with you. So anytime I've done a barter deal like that, I had to believe in the product or service myself to the point where I could go sell it without my friend.
That's a huge distinction, right? It's not just the opportunity, the upside of the money, but if you didn't believe in the product, even if you thought it might hit, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, well, those deals are out there all day, every day.
Right.
You can go work for free for equity with any Tom, Dick, or Harry who's hung on a shingle. There's lots of people that need marketing help, and they'd love to have marketing help for free or deferred payment. But yeah, I feel like I've got to believe in the company that I'm working with. Otherwise, everything feels really shallow and it's not very fulfilling.
That's great. Scott?
I think in our corporate culture, people know our authenticity the minute they walk through the door. My wife is also in the practice, so we have a family business too. And I was having come from big fancy Wall Street firms where they're on tall towers, Class A commercial space with very little soul, frankly. We were really intentional in the design of the feeling of our office. It feels like a living room. There's a fireplace. There are Oriental rugs. We sometimes have the dog there. The greeting is always special. In fact, everything down to the runner rug as they come in is red, so they're walking across red carpet. When they walk out, it's the lighter tint symbolizing enlightenment or some type of positive light has occurred or connectedness. So people have to feel comfortable sharing the deepest, darkest, most important hopes, dreams, and fears. That's what we're going for in our culture. We offer tea, any coffee, French pressed. We want people to feel our authenticity from the moment they enter our door. And as a result, just even looking around our office, they know it's different. They know we're different. So it's really common for people that, whether they're friends, clients, family, people walking off the street, when they come in and then leave, comments are very complimentary. And I've never seen an office like this. In fact, we have people that just drop by to show how different it can be in our industry. So I think it's a place that I spend most of my time, that I looked at it that way. If I'm going to spend a lot of my life here, it's got to feed everybody in the space, and I've got to be able to do it for a long period of time. It was actually the first, our building is the first commercial building in the state of Alabama that applied for LEED certification through the U.S. Green Building Council. And so we ran a matrix. I mean, this is how authentic it was. Did it make sense economically in the build? Did it make sense socially? And did it make sense environmentally? And if you're in long-term financial planning for generations, think about economic, social, and environment. It would be inauthentic to not have those paramount up front and recognizable in our culture.
That's awesome, Scott. So, Jane, I know you and I talk a lot about authenticity. We've done some of the same type of personal business growth work that has a big basis in it. And I know, specifically in terms of bringing it to your business partnership and dealing with those deals, I'd be interested in, you talking about obviously not any specific conversations with your partners, but how the concept of authenticity has played into the business partnership.
Yeah, so I think, and we have a lot of the same work, but I do think, the place where I start and what I create for my partners is we create it all. So there's no opportunities that fall in our laps. Everything is created. So if we're creating it, then we can start to see, and look, do people randomly call the blue with something? Sure. But you got to look at why did we create it that way? If it didn't show up in a very deliberate, intentional way, why is it showing up this way? And so that's really our measure. I mean, we go back, in our language, we're responsible for all of it, but we actually create all of it. So, any deal, it's like even when Joe first came in, that was intentional, created. Maury and I sat down and said, we're missing this thing. Who is that thing? We don't know who that thing is, but we're missing this thing. We got aligned on it. And Maury came to me and said, you wouldn't believe it. I know who that person is. And look at that. That person's looking for a new space, a new journey, and wants to be entrepreneurial. So everything is created. And I think that's really the measure. You look at it, you say to yourself, ooh, did I create this because it's going to be useful and impactful in my life? Or did I create this because I needed to learn a lesson? Which is also the other side of it. So
I love it. Great. Vijay, so authenticity in terms of your business relationship and deals and company?
Authenticity plays a big part of it. I mean, we have a very clear, very transparency, apparent office. I mean, doors are always open unless you're on a live conference call, but for the most part. But I think the other part of that is also empathy, right? I mean, you have to know where the other person is coming from. So you realize what they're looking for, whether it's a deal or a negotiation, or even they're having a bad day and they just chose to, you happen to be the guy that said hi the wrong way and they just lashed out on you. And one of the things that we like I have to say in the office is, fail as often as you want, but fail early, fail quick, and learn from mistakes. If you do the same mistake once or twice, it's fine. If you keep doing it over and over and over again, we might have some other issues to deal with. But we also have to understand, like I said, very authentic when we talk to folks, but we kind of understand where they're coming from and see what the limitations are and, build on those.
Awesome. And Judy?
So for me, morals, ethics, and integrity play a huge role. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with some of our vendors on a closer relationship base, and we just were not aligned. And, in having conversations with them, I recognized that we are clearly not aligned, and it wasn't a good decision for me to work closer with them. So I chose not to. And one of the situations, a few years later, they just, you see their name in the newspaper for not great things. And, my professional reputation is on the line. And my customers, I know they appreciate the level of professionalism that we offer them, not just from me, but from my management staff and then my team itself. So
that's great. So this has been such a huge treat for me. Frankly, I love doing every one of these podcasts and interviewing, specific entrepreneurs and deal makers on prior podcasts. I love doing the solo cast. But first of all, to have, 5 other amazing entrepreneurs giving their input, and then to have them be people that I love and that I care about and that have supported me in my life in so many ways. We've been together quarterly for about 4 years now. And there'll be a lot more years to come. So it's a real treat, especially to do this episode with them. And thank you also to all the Fueling Deals listeners for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor, other than that the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals. And then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.